Hi, welcome to America Uncovered. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. The United States has almost $1.5 trillion worth of unpaid student loan debt. And by the U.S., I mean over 44 million of us, including me. Yes, my own student loans are the only thing more expensive than my rent in New York City. In the U.S., the total amount of student loan debt is so high, it's 50% more than all consumer credit card debt. Too bad student loans don't come with points you can use to get cheaper airfare. Otherwise, I'd be flying first class every time. So how did we get in this mess? I mean, besides listening to our parents about the value of higher education. Well, it's thanks to the rapidly increasing price of college, especially public colleges like UCLA. Over the past 30 years, the cost of tuition and fees at public colleges in the U.S. has gone up 213%. Even if you factor in inflation, tuition and fees have gone up 46%. Don't worry, there are many ways to get out of student loan debt. For instance, you could pay it all off. Or you could die. That's about it. Okay, fine. You can also get out of it if you become permanently disabled. What's that, Shelley? A life-changing injury only gets you out of federal student loans. Good to know. Sure, Lehman Brothers got out of its $620 billion debt by filing for bankruptcy, but that doesn't mean you can. Student loan debt is one of the few kinds of debt that you can't get out of by filing for bankruptcy. I mean, it's important for kids to learn about how money works, or rather, doesn't work. At least, not for you. There have been a lot of ideas on how to solve this student debt problem, but mom and dad only have so much money. So an enduringly popular solution is free college for everyone.
We should have free tuition at public colleges and universities. That should be a right of all Americans, regardless of the income of their families.
But it's not just Bernie Sanders. Since the 2016 presidential campaign, a lot more people are liking the idea of free public college tuition. This poll by Morning Consult and Politico found that 63% of all Americans, including 45% of Trump voters and 47% of Republicans, like the idea of free public colleges and universities. And why not? They say that statistically speaking, if you have a bachelor's degree, you're more likely to have a higher salary, avoid arrest, be healthier, and even stay married. Although, that's just correlation, the same way that if you graduate from college, you're 30% more likely to be female. But that doesn't mean going to college makes you become female. Hopefully. Although if it does, that's okay. Anyway, it's good to remember that correlation does not equal cause and effect. That being said, it does appear that giving people a free college education may have benefited the United States in the past. After World War II, the GI Bill gave 2 million veterans free education. It cost $5.5 billion at the time, but some scholars say it was a driving force behind the economic growth the United States experienced after the war. Of course, it also helped that the rest of the world was a smoldering pile of rubble, and we had all their gold. But giving free education to the greatest generation, fresh off of fighting Nazis, is one thing. But free college for everyone? Well, that's where some differences of opinion come up.
There's no such thing as free education because you know that ultimately somebody else is going to be paying for that education.
Now, I'm sure that's really not a surprise to anyone that Trump doesn't think college should be free for everyone. But what is a surprise is that Hillary Clinton kind of agrees.
I'm a little different than those who say free for everybody. I am not in favor of making college free for Donald Trump's kids.
Why does she say that? Because as nice as free college sounds, it would very likely end up benefiting students coming from rich families and actually hurt the poor. According to this report from the Brookings Institution, students from higher income families would receive a disproportionate share of the benefits of free college. Wealthier kids today tend to go to more expensive schools, including the more expensive public colleges. If those schools were suddenly free, they'd save more money, which they could use to buy yachts or something. But wait, if all tuition was covered, wouldn't that mean more students from low-income families could now also attend these more expensive public schools? Not necessarily. They still might not be able to get into these elite schools even if they apply. Here's a statistic that's not very comfortable. According to this Stanford University research paper, rich students tend to get better grades and score higher on tests, partially because they can afford things like private tutors and classes while they're in high school. Elite public universities will always prefer better students, who on a general trend tend to be richer students, who will be all the richer for not having to pay any tuition. How do elite public colleges like UCLA become elite? By spending big on things like top quality professors and nicer facilities, and those are expensive. On average, tuition only covers about 1/5 the cost of a public university. Where do they get the extra income? Well, they get some government funding, about 1/3. And the rest, well, a lot of that is donations. And guess what? Rich kids are more likely to grow up to be rich adults who are able to be a bit more generous to their alma mater. Or they'll just spend the money on even more yachts. So just having free tuition at elite public universities doesn't mean that lower-income kids are going to have more access to those universities. Currently, a lot of lower-income students can already get subsidies for attending both public and private four-year colleges. That's because of a variety of federal and state financial aid that already exists. Plus, some colleges have their own scholarship and need-based aid programs. Low-income students can sometimes even use this aid for textbooks, housing, and meals, which quickly adds up to be just as much of a financial burden as tuition. But if public financial aid is replaced by free tuition, then these students may have to pay more, because the free tuition would only cover the tuition part. But free colleges could hurt low-income students in other ways too, by making the quality of public colleges and universities worse. Let's say the government starts to pay for everything. Just like with other government spending programs, they would probably set a cap for how much they'd give to any school. And if schools were completely government funded, that might make people less likely to donate to them since they're already paying taxes. And that means even elite schools would have to cut corners. That brand new lecture hall? That cutting-edge science lab? The state-of-the-art beer pong room? Not so likely now. And yes, salaries would be cut. Do you really think the government is going to pay professors $150,000 a year? So what will these public college professors do? Easy. Head over to private colleges and universities that will pay them more. In fact, top students would also most likely head over to private colleges as well. So you end up with a situation where private universities could end up drawing all the best talent in terms of students and professors. And the rich and poor could end up further segregated, a segregation that would carry on post-graduation. And there's another problem, maybe the biggest. If all public college education is free, who pays for it? Even Hillary Clinton's plan for free college tuition, which was a lot more modest than Bernie Sanders', would have cost about $500 billion over 10 years. But that federal money would only cover less than half of current college tuition and fees across the country. The rest would have to come from states that agreed to match the federal funds. What about states like Wisconsin, where the governor just cut $250 million in funding from public colleges? Are states just going to fork over the rest? Probably not. So paying for it could still be a challenge. But even if it could get funded, does free college make economic sense? 20 out of 22 economists interviewed by NPR's Planet Money said it was a bad idea. Another problem is there's evidence that when someone gets something for free, they don't see it as being valuable. Like, I might buy myself a sweater, but if I get a sweater for Christmas, I am never going to wear that. There's already a high dropout rate at public colleges. More than 1 in 3 students who start at a 4-year public college don't finish. Some research seems to show that completion rates fall the less students pay towards the cost. A good example of that is England. Before 1998, full-time students in England were able to attend public universities free of charge. But despite the free tuition, low-income students were becoming a smaller and smaller portion of those with bachelor degrees. Again, the wealthier benefited. Because of substantial inequality in pre-college achievement, the main beneficiaries of free college were students from upper and middle class families. On top of that, there was a surge of people going to universities. Government funding couldn't keep up, the system deteriorated, and universities tried to limit enrollment. So, they implemented tuition and fees as well as financial aid. The result? According to the report, quality of education improved, enrollment increased, and in particular, the participation of students from low-income families saw the most growth. Instead of providing free education for all, England focused on giving aid to those who needed it, and the entire university system benefited. Though, at least one UK student thinks a little wealth redistribution might make things better. Hey, how come the top 1% of protesters get to have 90% of all the protest signs? So what do you think about free college tuition? Leave your comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe for more episodes, and be sure to turn that notification bell on so you're notified when we post new videos. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.